Hey, welcome. Today, we're cracking open the Modern English Teacher's Playbook. We're going to break down the core philosophy and the go-to methods that really make language learning stick. So let's get right into it and see what makes modern teaching so different from the way things used to be done. So let's just kick things off with a big question. Have you ever wondered what actually works in a language classroom? I mean, beyond just memorizing lists of vocabulary, what gets students from just knowing words to actually using them to communicate? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to solve today. Okay, so this right here, this really gets to the heart of the huge shift that's happened. The old way was all about drilling grammar completely out of context. Fill in the blank, repeat after me. But the new way, it's about giving students a real-world task. The grammar suddenly becomes a tool they need to use to get the job done, not just some abstract rule to memorize. All right, so let's dive into that big idea. We are moving way beyond those old drills to really understand the philosophy that drives modern language teaching. And it all comes down to something called the communicative approach. So what this really means, at its heart, is that the whole point of language is to communicate, right? It's about asking for directions, telling a story, ordering a coffee. In this way of thinking, grammar isn't the star of the show anymore. It's more like the vital supporting actor that just helps make sure the meaning gets across clearly. But here's the thing. To be a great teacher, you've got to understand how our brains are actually wired to learn a second language in the first place. So in this section, we're going to get into the science of it all. Now, here's a term you absolutely need to know: comprehensible input. This is basically the learning sweet spot. It's not about throwing super complex language at students and overwhelming them. It's about giving them stuff they can mostly understand, but with a few new things sprinkled in that they can figure out from the context. Honestly, it's exactly how we all learned our first language as kids. And this is what it actually looks like in a real classroom. A simple story with some pictures lets students connect new words to what they're seeing. They're not just translating word for word. They're decoding meaning, like little detectives. And that is a much, much more powerful way to learn and remember things. This next idea is absolutely critical. It's called the affective filter. And you can think of it like an invisible emotional wall. If a student is feeling stressed out or anxious or just isn't motivated, that wall goes way up. And when it's up, it doesn't matter how brilliant the lesson is, nothing is getting through. So a teacher's real job becomes lowering that filter. Creating a safe, supportive classroom with fun, low-pressure stuff like icebreaker games. Well, it isn't just about being nice. It's actually a requirement for the brain to even learn. A relaxed brain is a receptive brain. It's that simple. All right, so we've got the why and the how our brains work. Now let's get into the what, the actual blueprints or frameworks teachers use to build their lessons. We'll look at the two main ones. First up, we've got a real classic, PPP. It's super logical, right? It just flows. The teacher presents some new language, then the students practice it in a really controlled way to make sure they get it right. And then, finally, they get to produce it more freely on their own. It's a fantastic way to build both confidence and accuracy, especially with a tricky new grammar point. Now, task-based learning, or TBL, totally flips that on its head. Here, students get a real-world task right from the start, and they have to use whatever language they already have to get it done. Then, after they've struggled and tried to communicate, the teacher comes in and helps them with the language they needed. This is amazing for fluency because the learning is driven by a real need to get something done. Okay, so how do we take these big ideas, these blueprints, and actually apply them to the 4 core skills? Let's do a quick fire round of some proven techniques for listening, speaking, reading, and writing. When it comes to listening, the goal is to make it active, not passive. An activity like dictogloss, where students listen and then work together to rebuild what they heard, turns them into language detectives. And prediction tasks are great too. Just by looking at a picture and guessing what the topic is, you're priming the brain to listen, which makes a huge difference in comprehension. All right, for speaking, the name of the game is maximizing the time students are actually talking. Role plays are perfect for this. They give a real context and a purpose. But the real secret weapon? Simple pair work. Think about it. Instead of one student talking in front of the whole class, you suddenly have half the class speaking at the exact same time. It's a game changer for getting in practice time. With reading, it's all about teaching strategies, not just words. Jigsaw reading is brilliant. Each student becomes an expert on one little piece of a text, and then they have to teach it to their group. This makes them really understand their part. And of course, we teach those vital real-world skills, like skimming to get the general idea versus scanning to find one specific detail. And then there's writing. You know that scary blank page problem? Well, guided writing helps with that by giving learners a clear structure to follow. And having students do peer review is so powerful. Not only does it make the final writing better, but it also teaches students to think critically about language and become better writers themselves.
Okay, let's step into the real world. A classroom isn't some perfect laboratory. It's a dynamic, sometimes chaotic space. So let's talk about managing those real-world challenges.
Let's be real. Pretty much every class has students at different levels. And the answer isn't to just teach to the middle and hope for the best. It's to differentiate. By offering slightly different tasks and using smart grouping, you can challenge your advanced learners while still supporting your beginners, all in the same activity. All right, what about when students make mistakes? Because they will. The modern approach isn't about being the grammar police. A gentle recast corrects an error without stopping the flow. Or even better, just make a quiet note of common errors during a speaking activity and then review them with the whole class later. That way, you respect their attempt to communicate. All right, so let's pull all of this together. If we boiled everything we've talked about down to a few golden rules, what would they be? Let's take a quick look. First up, the big picture rules. Number 1, do focus on real communication, and don't let lessons become just grammar drills. Do use real-world stuff like menus and video clips, not just artificial textbook language. And, importantly, do correct errors that really block communication, but don't interrupt a student's flow for every little slip-up. And for actually running the classroom day to day, do find a good balance between practicing for fluency and practicing for accuracy. Don't overcorrect so much that you scare students into silence. Do adapt your tasks for all the different levels in your room. And finally, do encourage students to help each other and never, ever publicly compare their abilities. So there it is, a deep dive into the modern English teacher's playbook. You have the philosophy, the lesson blueprints, and a whole toolkit of practical things you can use. The only question left is, what's the first thing you're going to build?